presentation. My co-host Brandy will then take the lead on a wrap-up activity of self-reflection. So settle in with your lunch and enjoy. I'm going to pass things over to Nancy.
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, everybody. I just want to take a second and introduce Nicole as well. She's also a community outreach worker. I think she didn't get her bio in. Nicole, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, sorry, I was muted. My name is Nicole Croto, and I'm also a community outreach worker with Nancy. Nancy's absolutely amazing, and her bio does not give her justice. She's awesome. I am currently in my education journey with a thesis on representation and resources in school systems, specific to LGBTQ plus issues. So I'm very thankful to be here with Nancy giving this presentation today.
Awesome. So do we have share screen ability? I think so.
You should.
There we go. Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay. So yeah, I think I came in, I had a little bit of a technical difficulty, and I came in, you were doing a land acknowledgement. So, okay, we'll skip just past that then. Just a little disclaimer and general note that the language and definitions are always evolving in our community. As cultural norms change, there's tons of variations, big and small. So also not everybody who identifies as something under the LGBTQ umbrella necessarily identifies in exactly the same way. So even from person to person, these terms are gonna vary a little bit. So it's always best to allow the people that you're interacting with to self-identify. They'll use the definition that they're comfortable with, and it's always okay to ask questions. Just know your audience and I don't know, like it's okay to ask a question, but don't over ask, or don't ask anybody to overshare, right? Like some things are appropriate and sometimes you're in a situation where it's not always so appropriate. So we've already introduced ourselves. How did we come up with this great big acronym that we've got going on here?
So there are many letters in the LGBTQ plus umbrella that are ever evolving and adding on to our acronym. So Nancy and I are going to go through each letter showed on this display, and these just touch on a good broad variety of the acronym, but some people may identify outside of this acronym or outside of just the questioning umbrella. Some people may identify within two of these brackets. So I'm going to start off with the L of LGBTQ+, and that stands for lesbian. That is a woman who is primarily attracted to another woman.
Okay. G is gay, and it's typically identifies a man who is attracted to another man.
B stands for bisexual, and this is an individual who is attracted to the male and female gender.
Transgender, I'm just gonna make this a little bigger here. Transgender is a person whose gender identity differs from that as their assigned sex at birth.
So transsexual is actually an outdated term in this. It's more of a medical terminology, and it's more found in academic sources opposed to a label that someone might put on themselves.
Our first Q stands for queer, and it's probably one of the most widely confusing ones out there. Queer seems to have a little bit of a different definition for everybody. But it is kind of the umbrella term, and it covers like a lot of the different identities that you'll see in here, or that we're going to talk about today. And it's kind of a word that has been taken back. It was a pretty nasty word at one time, and we've kind of taken that back and been a little empowered by it. And we'll talk more about that kind of stuff a little bit later.
The second Q is for questioning, and this is the process of understanding one's gender, sexual orientation, gender expression. So questioning is just that stage and that Q that's basking in the unknown and the beauty of still figuring it out.
Intersex is an individual whose sexual anatomy or chromosomes do not fit with the traditional markers of male and female. So often what we'll see is people who are born with male and female genitals.
The first A stands for ally, and that is typically someone who is not under the LGBTQ umbrella. That is a great supporter for all issues that are LGBTQ.
Asexual is an individual who's generally not feeling any sexual desire or attraction to any particular group of people. It's not the same as celibacy, and it also has a lot of subgroups.
The last letter in this acronym is P, which stands for pansexual. And this is a person who finds their attraction not limited to gender. And who loves people for who they are.
Okay, moving along. So we have two-spirit and transgender people, and this is often confused. A lot of people tend to think that two-spirit and transgender are the same thing, and they're actually quite different. Two-spirit refers to a person who identifies as having both a masculine and a feminine spirit. It's used by Indigenous people. If you're not Indigenous, please don't use that term. It describes their sexual gender or their spiritual identity. It's usually inclusive of ceremonies and specific roles within their community. In the Indigenous community, there's a lot of things where it is expected that somebody who is female will perform those ceremonies, or somebody who's male will, and somebody who's two genders is typically able to perform all of those. Transgender people have a gender identity or gender expression that differs from the sex that they were assigned at birth. And we'll talk in a little bit too about transgender. Transgender has a lot of different terms under that umbrella as well. Oops. Sorry about that.
So while Nancy's setting this up, here is a visual display of some other acronyms that you may come across in different contexts. This could be in a social setting, but some of these are also found within social media. To start off, there is the first acronym on the left-hand side, MAAB, which could also be could be switched with FAAB or UAAB, and that stands for male assigned at birth, female assigned at birth, and unassigned at birth.
Pride is people respecting individuality, diversity, and equality.
Sojasic, also as SOGIESC, stands for sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression.
I'm just going to stop here for a second and mention, like, a lot of these, I mean, we're giving you what they stand for, but if you have questions about the actual meanings behind them, just jot them down and we can talk about that a little bit at the end. TERF is trans exclusionary radical feminists.
QTPOC stands for queer and trans people of color.
GSM, gender and sexual minorities.
GNC is gender nonconforming.
PFLAG, parents and family or friends of lesbians and gays.
GLAD, Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation.
And MSM or WSW is men who have sex with men or women who have sex with women.
So now we're gonna,
oh, sorry, you go ahead. You go ahead.
There's a lot to unpack on this slide, so both Nancy and I will unpack it. So trans with the asterisk is a way to use a shorthand expression to refer to a variety of identities that are incredibly diverse, but share one simple common denominator, is that a trans person is not cisgender, man or woman. So cisgender and transgender are two terms that one will often hear. Cisgender means that you align with the gender that you were born with or that you were assigned with at birth. Transgender means that you do not align with the gender that you were assigned at birth. So here are some terms that you will hear that all fall under the trans umbrella. So they include transgender, trans man, trans woman, gender queer, agender, two-spirit, gender fluid, non-binary, gender non-conforming, bigender, third gender, trans masculine, trans feminine, and androgynous.
And trans is really confusing. This is where we find a lot of people get really tripped up. And I'm not even going to lie to you. Like this language is always changing, and we're always learning. You know, even those of us who consider ourselves well versed in this, there's always something to learn here.
I think the biggest takeaway when looking at transgender, the transgender term, is to just acknowledge that that person does not assign or does not feel attached to the gender that they were assigned at birth. So that means that they're not comfortable, they don't feel safe associating with that gender that they were assigned at birth.
Here we have the genderbread person. So again, like I said, it's right here. Gender is one of those things everybody thinks they understand, and most people actually don't. So gender is not binary. It's not just one thing or just one. Like it's a very broad spectrum, right? And in a lot of cases, for a lot of people who identify as trans, it's both. Even if you don't, like I identify as, I'm a cis woman, and I really identify as feminine, but I have a lot of characteristics that I would consider to be masculine, but I definitely lean, to one side of the spectrum for sure. So here we have our genderbread person, and we're talking about some of the different things to consider with trans. So gender identity, it's kind of how we're thinking of ourselves, and it relates to our womanness or our manness or our femaleness, right, or our maleness. Gender expression is more about the way that we behave, the way we dress, the way that we act, right, our general demeanor. Attraction is whether we're attracted to males or females or trans people as well. And then our biological sex is usually the gender that we were assigned at birth. So it has a lot more to do with the physical, like genitalia and things like that. It's the science.
One thing, Nancy, if I can interject too, one thing that I think is really important to acknowledge is that both Nancy and I are cisgender, talking about a topic that relates to us under the LGBTQ umbrella, but does not relate to us firsthand. So talking about certain circumstances that would affect a transgender person, Nancy and I don't have first experience on that. There are some opportunities next week to hear about some first person experiences through understanding the transgender umbrella that I really recommend you taking the time to see, because that would be a first person experience. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as much as we speak on this, we also have to acknowledge that it does not impact us firsthand.
Thanks, Nicole. So understanding pronouns. This is another one that really trips people up. So as we know in the English language, and I know there's some English teaching people here, so pronouns replace people's names. So in the same sense, we want to give that same respect, right, to people that are identifying. Pronouns add gender. All the implicit assumptions and associations that we have with gender. For example, he is nice instead of saying Sam is nice or George is nice. Everything that you associate with that person is nice. We don't have to use pronouns. We could always, I could constantly say Nicole this and Nicole that, but it gets a little tiresome, right? Whoops, sorry about that. So everybody has their pronouns that they use, and we should never ever assume, right? If you're not sure what pronouns somebody's using to identify, it's always best to go with they.
I know something that can be a little challenging, especially when being new to facing someone that doesn't, that may correct you on pronouns, is how do I ask for someone's pronouns if I'm not sure? The first is to always offer your name and your pronouns. So something that I did for this presentation is under my name title, Nicole Croto, it also has she, her. So that opens up the conversation that here are my pronouns right away. If you'd like to share your pronouns with me, I'm more than willing to listen. I'd love to hear them. So always offer your name. And this could be an easy introduction. Hi, my name is Nicole Croto. My pronouns are she, her. Let's get started with the day. The second one is to explain why you are asking. I think transparency is such a beautiful thing. Saying, hey, Nancy, I'm not sure which pronouns you'd like. How should I address you? And Nancy would, oh, thank you so much for asking. My pronouns are she, her. And again, that kind of ties into the third one, is just ask, what are your pronouns? And that kind of opens up a dialogue as well, to show that it is a safe space and that we can talk about pronouns and make sure that everyone feels comfortable.
Mm-hmm. A couple things just to try and avoid, if you can, is, and it's a very common mistake, so don't feel horrible if you do. I know I've done this myself in the past too. So the word preferred. So our pronouns are not really something we prefer. It's something that we identify with. So it's just a little more respectful if we don't use the word prefer and we just ask, what are your pronouns? And again, so same thing using the word I use, right? So I wouldn't typically say I use she, her. It's I am she, her. Mm-hmm. So just kind of keep those a little bit in mind when you're doing those introductions.
Here are some other common words that you might hear in all different situations. We've already talked a bit about the ally, that A in the acronym. There's a second one beside it, androsexual or androphilic. And this is a person who is primarily sexually, aesthetically, and or romantically attracted to masculinity. So more so the energy, the masculine presence, opposed to man. So anyone can carry this masculine energy, and that's what this person is attracted to.
I'll just kind of take the next two because they're sort of a little bit related. So it's aromantic or asexual. Aromantic is somebody that doesn't really experience romantic attraction, and it's not gender biased at all. And likewise for asexual, it's somebody who does not typically experience sexual attraction. Sometimes they call that ace.
Another term is closeted. This is when a person is not out about their gender or sexual orientation.
And then gynosexual, gynophilic, it's somebody who is typically attracted to femininity, and that can be sexually, aesthetically, or romantically as well.
Heterosexual is a term used when someone is attracted to the opposite sex of them. This is also a term known as straight.
Homosexual is somebody who is primarily sexually, aesthetically, or romantically attracted to the same sex. But the term homosexual has actually become outdated. It's very clinical and sciencey, and has become in a lot of ways derogatory and offensive. And a lot of times that's actually attributed to the religious connotations and stuff that have been involved with that.
Homophobia is a prejudice or hatred towards the LGBTQ community as a whole. So this includes having a hatred towards gay, lesbian, queer, bisexual, or trans people, and that is expressed in their speech or actions.
Intersex is a person with one or more innate sex characteristics, including genitals, internal reproductive organs, and chromosomes. They fall outside of the traditional concepts of male or female bodies.
Non-binary is a term that is often used within the LGBTQ community, but it falls under the transgender umbrella. So this term might be a little confusing to first grasp, which is totally normal. But non-binary is a person whose gender identity and expression falls outside of the binary gender categories of man or woman. So an easy way to see this is oftentimes when we view transgender individuals, that is someone who is not comfortable with the gender they were assigned at birth. So they would want to change that gender or present as the other gender. Non-binary is kind of the middle ground where someone does not fall between a masculine or feminine, but it could also represent that on some days they represent more feminine presenting, and some days they are more masculine presenting. So it's more of a fluid term.
Out is anybody who identifies under the LGBTQ plus spectrum, and they are they're out and about within their personal, public, and professional lives. So no secrets.
Yeah. Similar to that expression of outing someone is when someone else shares the sexual orientation or gender expression of another person. So this is very, very frowned upon because this person is not consenting to have that information out into the world. And so that is why the term outing is a negative term, because that is used without the person's permission.
Pansexual, as we said, forms physical, romantic, and or emotional attractions to any person regardless of gender identity. So gender is not the important, it's what's on the inside of the person that they are.
And similar to what we mentioned earlier, questioning is just that exploration phase of going through that sexual orientation and gender identity.
Okay, so what language to avoid? So instead of saying homosexual,
you should say gay person / people or lesbian. So use the title in the LGBTQ acronym.
Sexual preference.
You should use sexual orientation.
LGBTQ plus lifestyle.
Instead of using that lifestyle term, you should use LGBTQ people and their lives.
Gay rights or special rights.
Equality for LGBTQ plus people.
Born male or female.
Assigned male, female at birth.
Oh, this one really drives me crazy. Transgender people and normal people.
Transgender and cisgendered people.
Seriously, what is normal? Really? Okay. Both genders.
All genders.
Yeah. It.
They.
He, she.
Transgender man or transgender woman.
Okay. And whoops. Words have their history. So, like I said before, there was the word queer was a very disrespectful word, like for a long time. It started coming back. It started being taken back around. I believe it was like the Stonewall days, right? When the riots and the protests and stuff, and the we're here, we're queer, get used to it. That's kind of when we started taking that term back. But it was even back, I want to say like in the 80s, I guess, when when I was in high school, queer was still a pretty dirty word, right? Unless you were queer, it was not appropriate to use it. Now it's very widely used, and we've completely taken that word back. And it's a word that comes with a lot of pride. And another one that was like that is the word queen. So it used to be very derogatory, but now with, especially because we have such a cult following with like drag queens and stuff like that, there's like definitely a sense of pride around that one.
There are some words, though, that have a very negative history that have been reclaimed and empowered by peers and allies. I will mention, though, that although these words have been reclaimed and empowered, that does not mean that everyone is still comfortable with using them, especially within the community. But some of them are identifying factors that community members use in order to identify certain characteristics within the community. So for example, you have the term dyke that was used as a really bad way to identify as someone. And now that is used within the lesbian community as someone who is more masculine. So some people use this term in their everyday life to explain themselves or others. But I will still say, although some of these words have been reclaimed, some people do still find them offensive to use. So it's also understanding that if you were not in the community itself, or someone in the community is not using that term to identify themselves to you, I would still be very leery of using those terms.
Yeah, it's a little bit, I like to compare it to like, it's when Black people will often use the N-word with one another. But I mean, I would definitely not walk up to a Black person and use that kind of language with them. So some of these words are still kind of like that among people in the community as well.
Yeah, like I will be very transparent and say that there are some words on this list that even I don't like to say, and I will never say as someone in the community, but I have a lot of LGBTQ friends that identify in different letters of the acronym that will gladly use these letters in everyday conversation.
Yeah. So there's words with a negative history that have become really outdated and are still offensive. And among those are sod and sodomite. Those still have a lot of very religious connotations to them and are still considered very hurtful. Another one is fruit and light in the loafers. So I think the point to take away is that, if there's something that you're questioning, whether you're comfortable saying it, don't say it.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah, that's very fair. Now, there are some easy ways to be inclusive in your everyday life. Some would include being a part of this presentation. Just getting to know the general definitions is already a big step in being more inclusive.
Always ask questions and don't assume. And like I said earlier, like, you know, don't be careful how far you're taking your questioning. You know, if you're talking about something that's going to get into a conversation about somebody's sex life, like you wouldn't do that, you know, if you were two straight people talking necessarily. So just, you know your audience and know what questions to ask, but just the basic things like pronouns, or is it okay to use this term, or, you know, questions like that. I don't really know any people that get offended by those kind of questions, so.
The third way is to create a safe space in your classrooms, offices, work areas, homes, and any other gathering spots. So an easy example of this would be a classroom setting, having a little rainbow magnet on your chalkboard. You know, kind of creating the area that it's a safe space and you're welcome in.
Part of that is like also like speaking out too, right? Mm-hmm. If you're hearing things that could single people out and stuff, like stand up, take a stand and kind of stick up for that person. Including LGBTQ plus flyers, posters, publications and media in your spaces, right? So again, like Nicole was saying, like the little rainbow, or, you know, just maybe things from the health unit or stuff like that. Just letting people feel welcome when they come into your space.
Mm-hmm. And that ties into always using inclusive and gender neutral language. If you want to be inclusive and you want people to feel safe around you, just using pronouns that people give you and respecting those pronouns is already a huge way that you are inclusive and that you share that you're a safe person to talk to and be around as an LGBTQ ally.
Yeah. And even just things like, you know, addressing a room full of people, it's always been, you know, customary to say, ladies and gentlemen, or boys and girls, right? No, how about folks? Good afternoon, folks. You know, it can be really, really simple little changes like that help to make people feel included. Mm-hmm. So words matter, names matter, words are important. Language is fluid, confusing, and evolving. It requires mercy and patience, narrative and explanation. Most of all, it requires listening. How many times have words been used to rob us of power? By using them differently, we take power back. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So this kind of concludes our presentation for you. We really, really love that you were able to listen to us and learn more on these acronyms and definitions. If you have any questions, now would be the best time to ask them.
We do, we also at Pride, we're working on some different intersectionality and diversity trainings. So, you know, we're hoping to kind of put that out to schools and industry and public service, all those kind of things where we're interacting a lot with the public. So if you are a director, or even, you know, if you don't have to be a director, talk to your director, right? If you think that you're working in a space that could use something like that, absolutely reach out to us at Brockville Pride, and we can tailor fit a training program for whatever your needs are. And then I just want to mention too, as Nicole said, our lunch and learns are going to be fabulous next week. We have 3 of them. The first one on Tuesday at 11 o'clock is a two-spirit person who is also an artist, and they're going to come and talk to us a little bit about their connections with the LGBTQ plus community. Sorry, that is Wednesday at 11. Tuesday at 11 is Tanya King, who's actually our reigning Ms. Pride. Tanya is a transgendered woman, also a drag queen, and identifies on the autism spectrum as well. So that's going to be really interesting. And then on Thursday, we're going to have a diverse panel of people that are just going to talk about their stories, and everything's going to have Q&A panels too. So we're super excited about presenting those. They will be in person at the EEC, and we're also going to be live streaming to our Facebook page and Instagram. So that's it. We'll open up the floor if anybody's got any questions.
So if people want to raise their hands, if they have any questions, and I'll scroll through the names here, see if I see any hands.
Is it helpful if I'm going to unshare this so you can see more of the screen?
Ah, yes, thanks.
There we go.
Well, I've written down a couple that popped up in the chat box. The first one was, where does the 2S fit in?
Like where in the acronym?
Or what does 2S mean?
Okay, so to answer both, there's a little bit of questioning about where the 2S fit, and I tend to put it at the beginning because 2S refers to Indigenous people, the first people. Okay. So I will always I typically just use LGBTQ plus because it's like, it's simple and it's short and it starts to get to be a mouthful. And I find I always put the plus in there just to be inclusive of everybody else. But if I am doing a longer version, I will put the 2S at the beginning.
Okay.
That seems to be the general rule, but not everybody does. As for where they fit in, I'm not sure if we covered it. Who asked that? Karen? Where's Karen?
Yeah, if I can jump in, it was me. And I just, when you first put the acronym up, I've always seen 2S at the front. And so I just wondered, and then of course the next slide was 2S, right? So yeah, so it's all good. And you've explained it very well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Any other questions here? Nancy and Nicole, is this presentation available to be emailed out to people who are attending today?
I think we could mail it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If you want to share it with us, I can send it out with the post-event survey.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with that. And we'll also have the recording available as well. So whatever format is easier for people to share with their staff or friends and family.
Okay, great.
Okay.
If anybody does want to reach out, you can always send a message at, you can reach us, you can check out our webpage, brockvillepride.ca. And I can send our personal emails. Well, you have our personal emails, so you're welcome to send those out with the post.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Another question, does Brockville Pride have any posters or tools for local businesses to display over the Pride season?
We do have some posters like for the actual Pride events.
Okay. Are there rainbow stickers available in Brockville? People are wanting some promo stuff.
Yes, to that too. I know we do have some downtown already, but who's that? Oh, Jeanette. Yeah, Jeanette, see me, I'll get you some.
And they're also
I'll give you a sticker for your door.
To interject as well, there are also some stickers that are special once you do our intersectionality and diversity training. That kind of has a different meaning at the front of buildings to show that you've done that training for the LGBTQ community.
Great.
Haley from the food bank wants a sticker too. I'm going to make some
stickers for everyone.
Stickers for all. All right.
I'm actually not, Nicole, do you know how many stickers we have left? I know there's some older stock in there, but I'm not sure.
More than 10, less than 20, I think.
Okay, we're getting low. We are we were at the sidewalk sale, so we were unloading some stickers there. So we're a little bit short demand, but I know we do have a few at least. So
okay.
Food bank, that's Haley.
Jeanette, you have your hand up. Do you have another question in addition to the one in the chat box?
I have more of a comment, I guess. Okay. So I always feel super self-conscious when I'm trying to use pronouns because I'm a grammar person and I want to use proper grammar. And so still when I go to use they and it's a singular, I feel like I'm doing it wrong because grammar is like in my forefront of my thoughts. So and I'm sure that there are others who feel that experience. So I just wanted to share that, to say that I try to apologize and then correct myself. But I'm still like always thinking about grammar over top of their pronouns. So I'm trying to switch that, but it's a work in progress.
Same, Jeanette. As you know, I'm an ESL. I'm certified. So for me,
Right.
that was like really tricky, actually, getting used to that. But I mean, just keep telling yourself times are changing, right? Language evolves, like not even just like LGBTQ plus language. All language is always evolving, and there's
Right.
Lots of things that I find a little tricky at first too. But I mean, it's worth it. It's worth it to the people that are being included to be able to do that.
Right. So I have another situation that I just want to run by you. So I have a transgender relative, and for a long time I didn't know whether to call them my niece or my nephew, and then as a slight joke I called them niece a few because I really didn't know. So when is it, and is it just about asking them what they're comfortable with, or is there like a general time when you would switch, or like what's?
Absolutely ask them.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some people are not, maybe not so comfortable with it when they're in that transitioning process. Like some people are not comfortable unless they've gone through surgery, right? And they feel that they're really physically appearing in presenting in that manner, but other people are just, it's what's inside them, right? So they want that expression right off the bat. So it's there's no way of really knowing without asking.
Okay.
And it's not always the most comfortable, especially as we're just learning about this kind of stuff, right? So it's
super emotional too, because the family the larger family is going through that emotional stage as well of the transition, and so it's all really fueled and can be super awkward.
Yeah. But taking that moment and having that conversation with them is going to give them a sense of inclusivity that they're not going to have with all the people that are afraid to ask, and they're going to really appreciate.
Right. Thank you.
And if I can interject a little bit, through having these similar conversations with peers my own age as well, I think the biggest takeaway is that people appreciate is a change needed there. So by respecting their pronouns and asking, hey, what are your pronouns? That's already such a big step to show your family member that they are loved and valued by you. Right.
Thank you.
Good point. Thanks for those comments, Jeanette. And I know this kind of thing comes up with the Immigration Partnership. We try to offer intercultural competency training and stuff around communications with people from different cultures and languages. And it essentially just takes practice, right? And being okay with making mistakes sometimes and getting comfortable asking the questions. But it is a matter of practice. So I see Tamara was wondering if you have resources or links for ASL and deaf culture.
We do not.
Okay.
It's something that we can look into.
Okay.
Sure. Where are you from, Tamara?
Is Tamara still on?
She's muted.
I am. I'm from, I came on for the municipal drug strategy, but I do some work within deaf culture and I have my ASL certifications. So I'm just wondering if you had any other links specific to the topics you talked about, as sometimes they are hard to find.
Yeah, we don't right now, but we are relatively new. Nicole and I are both new in our roles, like just this year, or maybe towards the end of last year. I'm losing all sense of time now. So we hit the ground running. So it's certainly something that we would. Hey, there you are. Nice to see you. You know, we want to look at all the different avenues that we should be helping to make people feel more inclusive. And there's a lot of intersectionality, not just within the LGBTQ, but LGBTQ plus, you know, other things like that. And so, yeah, like, let us do some digging and see what's out there. I'm not sure if there's a huge calling for it in our area, but you never know, right? And it's something that I hadn't thought of. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks, that'd be great.
Jeanette is wondering where people can sign up for next week's workshops, and can you include the link in the chat box for people? Or you can share it with us and we can send it out with your presentation and the survey, whatever is easier.
The Lunch and Learns next week will be live streamed. If you go onto brockvillepride.ca, the website, it'll have all of the information there. There's no need to sign up. Just day of, if you click the Zoom or the link there, it'll take you right to the presentation.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Oh, there. Do you see that comment there from Danielle?
Yeah. Oh, no, I was up there with Nina's. Rainbow Health Ontario. Sorry, just taking some notes here. Okay, do we have any tools to respond to inappropriate, homophobic, or offensive comments? Suggested responses to practice to call people on this appropriately. We don't have any, like, anything in writing per se. I just, I think, first of all, know your audience. Don't do anything that's going to put yourself in danger. But if you're in a position where you're able to speak up for people, by all means, do so. But like I said, like, make sure that you're keeping yourself safe as well. I think just sometimes things that are said that are inappropriate are often done out of ignorance. Maybe people just don't have that education. So always, my first step is to always try and politely correct people, but not in a patronizing way either, right? Just it's choosing your language, right? If it is absolutely undoubtedly homophobic and offensive, and again, like, that's where you want to judge what your surroundings are like and whether you're safe to do so. But I tend to get I get a little irate with people, I guess, and I sometimes say more than I should. But yeah, I mean, if you can stick up for people and correct people, that's usually the best way.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Lauren, for putting the link up there.
All right, well, we'll wrap up our question and answer period here. And I'm going to pass it over to Brandy for a reflective exercise to wind things down.
So it's going to be a quick exercise, and it's just going to be discussing identity signs. I'm just going to start my slideshow. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So in this activity, it's just going to be a chance for each person to reflect and answer verbally only if you're comfortable doing so. So the 7 identity signs that we're going to be using in this activity are sexual orientation, assigned sex at birth, national origin, immigration status, gender identity, class, and race. So the first question is, the part of my identity that I'm most aware of daily is. And anybody can share if they want to unmute themselves, but they don't have to. This can also just be a reflection period where you can answer to yourself if you so choose to. Does anybody have anything that they want to share? Nice, okay. I'm going to move on to slide number 2. And again, if you want to answer verbally, you can. If you want to add it in the chat box or just use this as a reflection piece, that's fine as well. So the part of my identity that I'm least aware of daily is. Oops, sorry. I guess I should probably change the slide. Oops. Sorry. Yeah. So sexual orientation, assigned sex at birth, national origin, immigration status, gender identity, class, and race. And this is the part of your identity that you are least aware of daily.
Can I say something, Brandy?
Absolutely.
I think for me, it's national origin and race. I think if maybe I lived in another community such as Toronto, I would probably think about my race a little bit more. But in the small community where I live, it's not something that comes to mind often.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. So, oops, sorry, I will move forward. My computer just keeps freezing, sorry about that. So the next question is, the part of my identity that was emphasized or important to my family growing up was what?
Can you go back to the list?
Yeah, I should have shared it on each slide. Sorry about
No,
that.
that's okay.
These are all very interesting answers. So instead of moving forward, I will actually just read the question and then we can keep it on the identity signs. So the part of my identity that I wish I knew more about is.
Can you repeat the question again?
Absolutely. It says the part of my identity that I wish I knew more about is.
I think I agree with Karen here. National origin for me. In terms of, I was born in Canada, but obviously my great grandparents were not, and there are lots of gaps in what I know about my family history. So that's something that I'm always wondering about.
I feel the same way.
People are saying that. Yeah.
So question number 5 is the part of my identity that makes me feel discriminated against is. And this one might be something that people don't necessarily want to share, which is fine as well. Okay, number 6. Absolutely.
Yeah. I agree, Sarah.
Number 6 is the part of my identity that provides me the most privilege is. Looks like lots of people feel very similar about this question. If it's okay to proceed, we're going to go on to question 7. So the part of my identity that I believe is the most misunderstood by others is. And the last question does kind of relate to this one as well. And the part of my identity that I believe is the most, sorry, that I feel is the most difficult to discuss with others who identify differently is. That's all the questions that I have, but thank you for giving me the chance to ask these questions and a chance for everyone to reflect and answer if they felt comfortable in doing so.
Thanks very much, Brandy. Great activity. And it's nice that we can talk about it like verbally, or it seems that most people were comfortable connecting through the chat, which also works really well. I think what we'll do, we got this activity from a really great website. And when I send the email out with the presentation and the survey, I'm going to include the link for that website because there are a lot of good reflective kind of activities on there in case you are running a training session. So that finishes up our first lunch and learn. I hope you all have a few little takeaways that you can bring back to your office or home. Like I mentioned, I'm going to send a very short survey either today or tomorrow to get your feedback on this event. This is our first lunch and learn, so it's new for us, and we're always looking for some honest feedback on what we could improve on, because we do want these lunch and learns to be as accessible and as relevant to you as possible. Our next will be held in the fall, and it will be focused on HR policies linked to EDI issues. I think that's it. We have all your email addresses, so we will be connecting with you after this meeting and then again in the fall in case you're interested in our next lunch and learn. Are there any other sort of comments or questions? All righty. Well, if we don't see you before the summer, enjoy, and I'm sure we will connect again in the fall. Thanks, everybody.